Thanks very much. Let's get some more now with Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz. You just saw him in Joe's piece. He's joining us live from Capitol Hill. Some of your conservative colleagues, Congressman, didn't vote for the legislation yesterday because they don't want to raise the debt limit, but you're willing under certain circumstances to raise the nation's debt limit and go further into debt. Why?
Well, I didn't get elected to just raise the debt ceiling. That is part of the shared sacrifice if we're going to move forward. But what I did get elected to come do is change the way we do business. And a balanced budget amendment, I think, is a reasonable thing. Just send it to the states, let them have some input. That is the heart of what we're really asking here.
Ron Paul, who's running for president, Michelle Bachmann, the congresswoman from Minnesota running for president, they voted against your legislation. And this is what Michelle Bachmann said, her explanation why she didn't like what you proposed.
While I embrace the principles of the cut, cap, and balance, this is a pro-growth direction with those principles. I also believe that we have to repeal Obamacare because this will be devastating to our economy, but we can't continue to do what we're doing, and that's spend money that we don't have, because it's imperative that we not raise the debt ceiling.
Well, why is she wrong?
Well, I wish we could go cold turkey. You know, right now we borrow 40 cents out of every dollar that we spend in the federal government, but I think a reasonable plan is to put ourselves on a glide path, put a balanced budget amendment, which probably takes 7 to 10 years for the states to go through the ratification process. So I understand and respect Michelle Bachmann, Ron Paul, and others who want to just do it right. I worry that, 40 cents out of every dollar, we just cut that off right now. That's a very difficult thing to do.
All right, so I understand your goal in all of this, but it's not going to pass the Senate, and even if it did, the president would veto your cut, cap, and balance legislation. Here's the question. Are you ready to go along with a compromise, namely what the Gang of Six in the Senate has come up with?
No, the Gang of Six, we got a gang of 234 members, bipartisan. We had 5 Democrats who actually supported cut, cap, and balance.
But it's not going to pass the Senate.
But you know what? We're going down a path that the clock is ticking. I'm not willing to give up on that. I'm not willing to accept the premise that it won't pass. If we don't try, we will never achieve. And the president says, oh, we don't need a balanced budget amendment. We just need to do our jobs. Well, the president's never introduced anything that ever balances. His budget never balances. In fact, it doubles and triples the debt. It was presented to the United States Senate, was defeated 97-0. And with such a short time frame, I think this is a reasonable plan.
But if it doesn't pass the Senate, you got to do something to prevent the country from going into default. Would you be open to the Gang of Six proposal, which is a bipartisan proposal? The White House seems to like it. Looks like a bunch of Republicans. Tom Coburn, he's an author of it. Would you be willing to go along with that in order to avert economic disaster?
No, I'm not. If the Senate lines up in punt formation, then we need to blitz that punt. And I think you're going to hear people across America saying, block that punt. No, we came to change the way we do business. And I recognize that the clock is ticking, but we have a plan. Nobody else in this town has an actual plan. The president has never presented an actual plan.
I understand that you have a plan, but it's not going to pass. Let me show you what these numbers...
But they should vote on it.
In the CBS News, they'll vote on it. It'll be rejected, and then you're going to have to do something to prevent the country from going into default. Here's the CBS News poll. Debt ceiling agreement should include, look at this, 60% say should include spending cuts with what you want, but also tax increases. 28% only spending cuts, 3% only tax increases. At least according to all these polls, you're in the minority on this stance because you don't want any tax increases, even on the wealthy, even on ExxonMobil or GE or anything else. Is that right?
No, I think there should be some tax reform. We've said in our budget...
So you would go along with tax increases?
No, what I said is we got to broaden the base, lower the rates. Going through that process of tax reform, as was indicated earlier in your program, is a very long and difficult process. There are 2 fundamental things that we're asking for. Harry Reid, allow this vote to come up. Take a vote, just a good, clean vote. And number 2, I think the president needs to answer the question, what is he so afraid of on a balanced budget amendment? What is so impalatable? You know, there's a moment of clarity when he said he was going to veto it. The president says he's not going to support a balanced budget amendment. That should be a wake-up call to America that he has no interest in actually balancing the budget.
All right, so assuming that your bill doesn't pass the Senate, assuming the Gang of Six isn't done in time, would you be willing as a stopgap measure by August 2nd to pass this McConnell-Reid legislation that would at least allow the debt ceiling to go up and avert disaster?
No, we had, remember earlier, weeks ago, the Speaker actually brought up a bill to unilaterally raise the debt ceiling with no spending cuts, and it was defeated overwhelmingly. What I hope everybody realizes is the House Republicans passed the budget with 5 Democrats. I mean, and we passed the bill, cut, cap, and balance. So it does have some broad support out there. It's over in the Senate. The Senate needs to act. They've been dreadfully slow. They're nowhere. They don't have a plan. We hear press conferences and releases, but we actually have something on paper that has passed the House of Representatives. The president can avert this disaster by just supporting a balanced budget amendment. That's not an unreasonable ask.
One final question. I know you're giving serious thought to challenge Orrin Hatch, the longtime senator from Utah for the Republican senatorial nomination. What's wrong with Orrin Hatch?
Well, part of the reason we're in this problem is 26 times Senator Hatch had the opportunity to vote no on debt ceiling increases. 16 times he voted in favor of it. 10 times he allowed it to pass on unanimous consent. So I have the greatest respect for Senator Hatch. I may or may not do this, but I think it's that 36 years that people are worried about. And the part of the problem that we're dealing with is these guys didn't deal with the problems when they had a chance.
So I take it you hated what Ronald Reagan asked those Republicans in the House and Senate to do when he was president and begged them and Democrats to raise the debt ceiling. Ronald Reagan, you believe, was wrong.
I wish that at some point on both sides of the aisle, a Congress in the past would say, no, we're paying more than $600 million a day in interest, and if interest rates go up, that number's going to go up. Unfortunately, on both sides of the aisle, we didn't have the strength and the principle to say enough is enough, and now we're trying to avert disaster.
So just to be precise, and I'll leave it, Ronald Reagan, both President Bushes, they were wrong in seeking repeated raises in the debt ceiling. You disagree with all 3 of those Republican presidents.
Republicans and Democrats, there is nobody exempt from this blame. That's why we find ourselves in the precarious position that we are right now.
Jason Chaffetz, the Republican congressman from Utah. Thanks very much, Congressman, for coming in.
Thanks, Wolf. Appreciate it.